Bianca Belair makes her return to SmackDown. What is next for the EST in this changing landscape of the women's division? We're going to talk about it and everything else that happened in the world of black wrestling. Stay tuned. This is WrstlXtra.
Yo, 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 yo. This is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Always jump on my trios team, mix the WrestleManiac, if you will. Yeah. And of course, the professor that is Gerard Bonner. Boys, what is going on? What's happening? As we've seen on Friday Night SmackDown, Bianca Belair has returned to the ring. Mex, how long has it been since we've seen the EST?
What pay-per-view was it? Was it
SummerSlam?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where she won the women's title, the SmackDown women's title, as it was. Oh no, it was the new women's title, wasn't it?
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah, she won from that triple threat match. Really good match, but then Io Sky came and cashed in at the end. And yeah, we haven't seen her since then. So yeah, saw her reemerge, still in the same circles, somewhat the same storyline, if you like. Io Sky and Charlotte Flair were having their match on SmackDown. Damage Control got involved, effectively costed Charlotte the win. And when they were beaten down on Charlotte post-match is when we saw Bianca Belair reemerge and make the save for Charlotte Flair.
Right. So Gerard, what are we thinking with this whole thing now with Bianca's return? Did it feel right? What are we expecting to happen from here on in?
Well, I think the surprise for me is somehow, I guess I listened to too many people and thought she was going to be out for much longer. So I was genuinely surprised that she was back. And so I think her coming out, I don't know if it was as much to save Charlotte as much as it was to get revenge on Damage Control, as they were the ones who put her out in the first place. So in terms of story, it made sense. You know, it certainly made sense. Where else are you going to insert her? Nowhere else on the card, but then the top of the card, you know, around where the women's championship is. So it certainly makes sense to me. I think this is going to get super interesting, though, because just wondering, okay, what's going to happen with Io's reign? Where does Bianca fit in all of this? Does she need to have a title match? Is it too soon for her to have a title match? Like, it's just a lot of questions happening.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about Bianca kind of, you know, returning sooner than we expected. Obviously, when we first heard that she was taking a leave of absence, we thought it was going to be 3 months. Shortly after that, we heard it was going to be much longer, to at least the end of the year. Stuff like that. Obviously, then people asking the question, is she pregnant? I think it's safe to say she's not.
Right. Not just getting back in the ring.
Right. But at the same time, yeah, it was very unexpected. And it's going to be interesting to see how she's going to fit in and where she goes from here. Does she then become part of the championship picture? Or does she is she here to fill in a little bit, maybe have a bit of a feud with Bayley while Charlotte's chasing Io, things like that. Like, it's going to be very intriguing to see how this one plays out. Also as well, like, I don't know if this is a question, but obviously we had ramblings of, you know, while she was away, how she's going to come back. And one of the questions was, or one of the thoughts from fans was, you know, she's going to come back with Bobby and her husband Montez and Angelo Dawkins and all that. Any chance of that at all?
I don't think so, but I've seen some people saying that, obviously similar stuff. And something I was thinking of a week ago, I hadn't quite fleshed it out to put it out there in the public, but let me say it now anyway.
We're here now.
Go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a safe place.
Right.
I hope so. So I was thinking that Jade maybe goes into the faction. Bianca takes her time to come back, or well, obviously she's back now in that situation. And maybe it's a thing where the faction is prospering and everything. Who knows how long down the line this could be. Jade is prospering within the faction, the top women on the brand, whatever brand it is, with the belt maybe as well. And a situation arises where Jade starts beating down Bianca. And it almost conflicts Montez Ford as to, does he want his faction to, it still sounds silly because that's his wife, but does he want the faction to still thrive, or does he, you know, help his wife out, sort of thing? And it's just that kind of, I think there's a good story there to kind of conflict him, you know, kind of put him in a position. I would like to think eventually he joins takes his wife's side, but
I would hope so.
Be an interesting way to do it. Again, it's where they want to debut Jade.
So here's the question that would be on everybody's lips. Obviously, we have Jade, who's just signed with WWE. Obviously, for the last few weeks, she's been appearing here, there, and everywhere. And of course, you know, we have the issue or the thought of two very good black women, the only two black women on the main roster, as far as I know. Kaden Carter's another one, of course, but not as huge a star. Does this now mean that Jade can't be on SmackDown, or do we get the issue of them both being on the same brand and that being a problem? Gerard, like, what are your thoughts on this whole conundrum of the powerful black woman?
Well, my thoughts are interesting, and they have nothing to do with them being the powerful black women. I think we are certainly at the stage where we can have more than one powerful black woman on a brand. Even though, as I think about it, I'm not sure of which brand has proven that yet, but I think it's still very, very possible. I think Jade needs to stay as far away from Bianca as possible at this particular point. I think those two stars need to grow separately. You know, it's like two great trees. You know, you don't put them right next to each other because the roots will get entangled. Let them grow far apart so then we can measure how high they are. And so I think with Jade, she does not need to be on SmackDown, not if Bianca's there. And I think, you know, and we'll obviously get into the Jade conversation, the way they were positioning things before Bianca got back, it doesn't look like she'd be on SmackDown initially anyway. True. Which if that is the case and they continue with that, then we're good. Like, let's spread the wealth on this before we get to a space of having them in the same proverbial universe. So I think they do need to be in two separate places, but it has nothing to do with them being the powerful black woman.
Does it not? Because my question would then be, Mex, I'll get you to answer this one. So if, with Jade being as big a star as she is, if this was, say, an equivalent, say Britt Baker signed to WWE, would we still be having the same conversation? Would we still be saying Britt Baker and Bianca Belair need to stay far away from each other as possible? We can't have them on the same brand. Would we be asking that question?
What I would say to that, for me, there is an element of separate the two powerful black women, just because I know how people's minds work. We don't need to, like, they're already being pit against each other. There's just no need for it. Right. With your argument with Britt Baker, I would still agree with Gerard and say, yeah, you would separate them because just on a thing of balance. If we look at the top of the women's division on Raw, let's say it's Rhea Ripley, a Becky Lynch, and then you can say a Jade Cargill, although obviously yet to make her debut, etc., etc. While on SmackDown, you've got your Bianca Belair, your Charlotte Flair, and then Asuka, let's say, or Io Sky, who's the champion.
Bailey.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So just on a case of balancing and making it all even, I would say separate Jade and Bianca, or Britt Baker and Bianca, or whomsoever. But yeah, being, you know, two black women, the comparisons are going to keep coming. You know, keep them far away away from each other as possible. The Royal Rumble is the only time they should see each other and look at each other until we are ready to, you know, fire this feud into the universe. Like that's it. But again, with the comparisons, for me, when I saw this comeback by Bianca, the more important thing that I took from it all was just that we need a bit of an evolution.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want it to now become Jade is here and Bianca is here, and you know, there's those comparisons, because we're kind of seeing the same character that we've become accustomed to.
Right.
I know she's probably not going to turn heel. I'll stop banging on about that, but there can still be an evolution to the character to keep it fresh. And she's just made a return, albeit not, you know, ages she's been off TV. It was long enough where she could have probably come back. We could maybe see that next week, who knows, with some type of adjustment. I think that's the more important thing, so that she keeps up and stays fresh with, you know, this division that they are clearly doing stuff with. So
true. You mentioned obviously her coming back. Obviously she's just returned and it came out of nowhere, unexpected. Does it in any way feel underwhelming, or was it never supposed to be a thing where she makes this big massive return? Obviously Bianca Belair I'm talking about. Did it feel underwhelming? Was it supposed to be this big return? Like, what are you thinking, Gerard?
I don't know that it felt underwhelming. I think it was surprising, you know. So because it was a surprise, like, okay, wow, great, she's back. Like, this is super cool. I don't think it felt underwhelming at all. And besides, since she was put out by way of injury, you know, it's probably best to bring her back in a surprise way, as opposed to, hey, let's do a bunch of vignettes for her return.
Right.
You know, like, I think that would happen probably if she was out for 6 months to a year. You know, we were just right around the 2-month mark here. So yeah, I think it was handled well, because again, it was a surprise, and I'm just grateful nobody leaked it, since everything else seems to get leaked around here. So yeah, I'm glad, and it was not underwhelming at all.
Let me ask you guys a question. Yeah,
is it when do you think it would be time for her to chase the championship again? Does she have to do that straight away, or is that something that happens like later on?
Mex, you want to tackle that, or?
No, go for it.
For me, I think we've gotten to the point where we are accustomed to seeing Bianca Belair in championships around WrestleMania. So at this point, if she's not the champion, and the other thing too is her star continues to rise. So whereas a couple of years ago, it was, okay, we know she's going to be champion at some point. Well, we've seen her as champion. She's been the longest reigning champion. We basically associate her as a champion at this particular point. So since we associate her as champion right now, you know, she's at that space where she doesn't need to actually have the title for us to still look at her as main event caliber, upper echelon. She's Bianca Belair. So, you know, I think the challenge is, you don't want her, I got to say this carefully, because you want her to be viewed in the same conversation as Charlotte, but you don't. And what I mean by that is, whenever people hear of Charlotte coming around, their titles are automatically in jeopardy. I don't want people to feel like when Bianca comes, titles are in jeopardy, somebody's going to get squashed and somebody's moving down the card. Like, that's not what we want people to think. And my concern in all of this is Io Sky, right? And really the same thing with Asuka a couple of months ago. When Asuka beat Bianca, you know, nobody was really talking about Asuka's title reign. We were all talking about, when's Bianca going to get this title back? And so I know in the context of what we do, you know, the concern is Bianca, but I don't want Bianca viewed with the same, oh my God, she's going to kill the division perspective as Charlotte, you know, even though skill-wise, we want her in that conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that probably leads on to my question even better. So I recorded a podcast over the weekend with my guy Savage Talks Wrestling. He said he could see what's going to happen from a mile away. I said, what's that? He said Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. He reckons that's what they're going to do. He said maybe it's a thing of, maybe it sounds crazy to say this, but to give even Charlotte the rub. They've been trying to do this face turn thing with Charlotte for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that it's been failing. I think Charlotte's just at the point she's viewed however she's viewed by fans.
Yeah.
But we know they don't have much plans for those titles, and to kind of keep those two big stars booked and busy, that could be an avenue that WWE could look to exploit. What do you think about that?
I guess I've had in my head that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are going to be the ones that will get their hands on those tag titles. I see Bianca and Charlotte's team, and I'm not ready to call them a team yet, but I see their alliance kind of being an alliance of convenience. They both have issues with damage control, so they're going to work together. But, Charlotte doesn't play well with others. And, as history has proven, Bianca tries to help everybody, but these people who try to work with her, they just get jealous of her or whatever. And Charlotte, again, does not have room for somebody else on her stage. So I think at some point that tandem wouldn't work. And as tag champions, it would be doomed to fail, So I just think I don't see them as tag champs. I see them coming together to beat up, damage control. But then when we start talking about the women's title, they're going to obviously, be divided, because there's no way Charlotte's going to be like, Bianca, sure, it's your time. You win. Yeah. Absolutely not. Just not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
Charlotte can't be trusted very well for one.
I think your mic, bro.
Yeah, your mic's not on, my friend.
Yeah,
the beauty of being live.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to see that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see them tagging together.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've put a belt on Becky Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Becky Lynch is doing great stuff with that NXT women's title. It almost given us like a introspective look as to what a women's mid-card title could possibly look like.
Totally.
The way she's running with it. But
yeah,
sometimes they have been guilty of just throwing these belts on people just to keep them busy. They made Asuka and Charlotte tag team champions at one point, didn't they?
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it's a fair shout, but yeah, I don't want to see it.
And plus, in Triple H's WWE, I'm not sure that would necessarily happen. I think that's the hard part in trying to predict the future is people are still trying to predict from Vince McMahon's mind and pen, but we're in a whole new world right now. And so with that said, I don't know that we would get that particular tag team happening, but we'll see. Mm-mm.
we can hear the native audio, but not from the mic.
Yeah. So
cool.
Go figure.
Yeah, interesting to see Bianca back. I think it's just a case of if she can take a step further, evolve the character, and still be, at the top sort of thing.
And to something that you mentioned earlier, as you were, we were talking about the Britt Baker situation, and you were rattling down the people on the SmackDown roster. It feels to me like once again, SmackDown has become top heavy in terms of massive stars on the women's side, and it doesn't feel as balanced on Monday Night Raw. I mean, you have Rhea and then everybody else, though, they're going to have a great 5-woman match coming up at the pay-per-view premium live event, but you don't see those stars, or you don't think of those stars as prominently as you do when you start rattling off names on SmackDown, which again makes it super interesting that Bianca is over there at this point.
Yeah. All right. You're in.
Check, we can hear you.
1 2. Check 1 2.
Yes.
Tony Khan, are you messing with my system again? Tony.
Oh my gosh.
Tony.
Oh my gosh. The other TK. Hilarious.
Jeez. You mentioned Becky Lynch holding that NXT championship. Doing great things with it at the moment. It definitely works, and we've got this whole thing of a secondary women's championship, which is nice. Other people having a chance. We've talked about this before. It's something we're going to talk about today as well. Anyway, like, is this with Halloween Havoc happening later today? Is this the time that we see Jade eventually make some kind of appearance, or definitely some kind of real indication that that's what she's coming for? Is that the best place for her? Is this the time for it to happen?
Unless it's like, you know, she brushes past Becky Lynch as Becky Lynch is walking through the curtain. Good luck, champ. Or, you know, she's watching front row. I don't think they're going to do any kind of real debut, you know, other than what we've kind of seen already. Her just lingering around, watching the landscape of things. Probably the best we can get tonight. And I do think she should be.
And now it's
no way.
Mex's
turn. Watching. So if you guys have noticed, they're really trying to. Was my internet gone?
For a second? You're back.
Yeah, you're back. I think
you're here.
Back. Okay, sorry. Yeah, they've done a hell of a lot to kind of sell this. So now, like, I think they just need to proper invest in it. If they're gonna get Jade ringside or whatever, do that. But at this point, I think it's a Raw debut. She's got to be a Raw superstar, and then she just features on NXT. Fingers crossed once she wins that title.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, we mentioned this last week. I think with the way Becky's moving with this NXT championship, that's how Jade would have to as well. So, you know, we know Becky's a Raw superstar, and she's given opportunities to, you know, Raw superstars and NXT ladies as well. And I think that's how it would have to happen for Jade. Her being solely or planted in NXT would be very, very underwhelming if that was her home. But I think still at the same time, it's a perfect way with what they're doing with the NXT Championship, NXT Women's Championship, for her to come in to it. Speaking of all the ladies, we've had a lot of talk about the ladies. We're going to keep it going.
Because... Let me back up there.
Go for it.
Because the more I think about this, the more I think we actually could get Jade planted in NXT. Let me explain why. Number one, the last thing we saw last Tuesday night was the image of Jade Cargill looking at her watch, signifying, time's up. It's about time for me to come and take that NXT championship. Right. The NXT women's title is the only title that she has actually put her eyes on camera, which I think is also interesting. The other thing I think, you know, these last couple of weeks, there's all of this talk about this Tuesday night war that happened with NXT and with AEW. There's been a lot more focus, I think, on NXT and their ratings. And so, you know, if the biggest signee you've had all year shows up in NXT, people are going to tune in. You know, I mean, you could make the argument. It's one of the reasons Becky has been there. It's one of the reasons Dom has been there. Couple that with the NXT stars that they currently have. I think in terms of spreading the wealth and star power and things like that, that kind of star power on your television every week, Tuesday nights become destination TV. So I think we actually could see Jade Cargill plant her flag for a little bit, not necessarily a year, but I think it's safe to say she could go maybe up until Stand and Deliver, perhaps, on NXT television, and then officially debut on Raw the night after Mania. But at first I kind of was like, I don't think it's going to happen. But now I'm like, no, it could happen, because if you think about it, the star power that WWE has in its women's division is much bigger than it's been previously. You know, we've got Becky and Charlotte and Asuka and Bianca's back and Bayley and Io and Rhea. That's 6 across those 2 brands. So somebody's got to be the star power. Of course, Tiffany Stratton is killing it right now. Roxanne Perez. They were hoping for Nikita to be the star, but Nikita's not on TV. So Ruka's not there. So they need another female star on NXT television. Jade Cargill fits the bill.
That That could work. I think the beauty of it right now is that there are so many options, and none of them
There
seem like a bad option.
Right.
So it's going to be very interesting. As I said, we'll keep talking. We'll keep our talk with the women. So just a few days ago, earlier this week, Pro Wrestling Illustrated (PWI) released their new 250 as opposed to previously 150 women's ranking. Gerard, give us a bit of a synopsis of what went down with this list, and how did you feel about the top 10, and of course then our black women on the list as well.
For sure. So the PWI 250 dropped midweek last week. Of course, it's so weird when we shoot, and then everything else happens, right? But let me tell you what's so interesting about this. There's been so much talk about women's wrestling and the lack thereof in certain places and the like. But to see that just 2 years ago, PWI had expanded this list from 100 women to 150. And now we're at 250 women, which is just, that alone is absolutely incredible. The top 10 list, I think, is very, very interesting. There's a lot of conversation about it. I don't know if we need to go through the entire list, though we can say last year we had 2 black wrestlers in the top 5. That, of course, being Jade Cargill at number 5, and then Bianca Belair was number 2 last year. And a lot of people were upset because Shuri was number 1. This year, we have 3 black women in the top 10, which I think is pretty amazing, all things considered. Shout out to Willow Nightingale. And it's funny, when we talked last week, we were trying to predict who could be in there. I admittedly was low-key shocked that Willow Nightingale was in the top 10. Was number 8. Of course, her winning the inaugural New Japan Strong Women's Championship and defeating Mercedes Moné contributed to that. Athena was number 6, and her best rating for her entire career. Well-deserved. Some might argue perhaps it should have been higher given what she's accomplished, though you could make the argument how many people got to see it because it was behind the Ring of Honor paywall, which is another deal, which also leads us to the whole Julia at number 2, because when we start talking about behind the paywall, how many people actually saw it, her at number 2, I can't corroborate how many people got to see her actually work this year, certainly in the States. Perhaps the shocker to me is Bianca Belair at number 3 on this list, given, what she accomplished in this last year, that including the longest reign of any woman in the modern era at over 420 days, which I thought was just absolutely incredible. She did have a small hiatus, as we just alluded to. It was only 2 months. So, given the period, which was from September 15th, 2022 to September 30th, 2023, she only missed at that point a month and a half. So did that warrant her being at number 3 behind Julia? I don't know. Number 1, of course, being Rhea Ripley. Hard to argue that one. And I say hard to argue it just because there are some people who will say, well, she didn't defend the title that much. But I say her presence in the product is unlike any other woman on any brand right now. Being so heavily involved in the Judgment Day, being heavily involved on NXT, on Raw, on SmackDown. She was all over the place. So I think she deserved that number 1. In terms of other black wrestlers on this list, Jade Cargill was at number 14. Remember, she was number 5 last year. And there are multiple arguments that could be made about that. She lost, of course, the TBS championship at Double or Nothing, then took a hiatus, came back, late August, early September, for kind of her rematch, then left, and then was signed to WWE. So that 2 months, 3 months off might have warranted her dropping in the ratings because she only lost 2 matches. So there's that. Trinity came in at number 23. That might shock some people, but I think that has a lot to do with the time period. September the
Definitely.
15th, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. She came back into pro wrestling late May, early June. So she only had a couple of months and a few matches, though she made a great impact, unintended. Trish Adora comes in at number 57. You know, all that she did as the Pan-African Diaspora World Wrestling Champion. I think I got all that right. Plus being part of the New Japan Dojo and now working with the infantry in Ring of Honor. And then after that, you know, there's a lot of wonderful, I think, independent wrestlers that are on the list. Rio is on that list at number 86. Tiara James is there at 149. Layla Gray is there at 151. And I think she got a lot of really cool play from that Wrestlers documentary as well. Kiana James is on the list at 166. Shalance Royale, congratulations to her at 181. Savannah Evans at 183, which feels really low, but I really was like 183 on Impact every week. I'm there. Queen Aminata, a favorite of mine, is at 189. I think she would have been much higher if injury had not taken her out.
Right.
Also, Jocelyn Navarro is on the list at 208.
Nice.
And Jordan Blade is on this list as well at 210.
Mix of the list of our black females on in the PWI 250. Which ones were surprising to you, both in the negative and maybe the positive as well?
I think Athena should be higher. It is mad to say be higher than 6, but the you know, Gerard hit the nail on the head. We put a whole load of Joshi wrestlers in this list last year, and we're talking about exposure and how many people would have seen it. And I don't think you can really tell to me that there are more people watching Stardom than Ring of Honor, even if it is behind a paywall. So you know, it's not really believable if that's the case. She's been excellent. This is it sounds crazy to say it's been a breakout year for her, but you know, for very long we've asked ourselves, as great as she is in ring, who is Athena? Like, what is the character about, etc., etc. And even now with the minions in training thing that she's doing, it's gone up another level.
Brilliant.
Like, it's really really good. So yeah, I think albeit that's a career you know, best for her, being in the top 10, number 6. You know, when you probably analyze it a bit further, probably been a bit hard done by there, to be honest. Bianca Belair at 3. I feel it's probably about right. And she's held the title for a long time. She's broken the record. We know all of that. But again, if we've said this multiple times on the show, if it's just pay-per-views, she has to be number 1.
Of course.
But how they book her in the in-between time, if anything, has probably let her down. And let her down as far as, you know, one place from where she finished last year. So nothing to, you know, throw an emergency, you know, party about or anything. But you know, she is still a great achievement. But yeah, I think we just need to get to a point now where we need to really book her brilliantly all year round, sort of thing. And this is probably where I foresee Rhea Ripley losing out next year. Like, whereas, you know, Gerard said Rhea Ripley's been a fantastic TV character. Rhea Ripley has been across every product. She is quote unquote leading this faction. You know, this is almost akin to what Sasha and Bayley were doing in the pandemic, when they had all the gold and just everywhere, like running the entire show. That's what Rhea's doing right now. But when it comes to look at this actual championship run, unless it starts to pick up pace from now, you know, the last few months out of WrestleMania, especially to about, you know, current time now, they really haven't done much of anything. They're obviously keeping her and Becky away. That's probably the WrestleMania match. So yeah, her character work has been great, but not so much the championship run. Willow, I think, is a fantastic story. You know, coming from literal obscurity to jumping into the top 10 is fantastic. Obviously, within this time, she's been the New Japan Strong Women's Championship. She's been ever present on the Indies. She's finally got the AEW graphic saying she's all elite. I said this from early doors. She is their Bailey, and this is NXT Bailey, and I don't even bothers me somewhat. Although I'm happy she's in the story and she's being used right now. Like, you guys are making her do this spooky stuff right now, and I'm thinking, do you know what you have right now? Like, she could be an absolute merchandise machine. She can be a strong franchise player for AEW, but you're putting her through this story, which is fine. Like, I don't think the story is rubbish or anything. I just think that, you know, it's there. Like, it's literally it's right just, there. Like, they're choosing to maybe go another route before they get there. Who knows? Though, I think the last person I wanted to kind of just shout out was Riho. Riho has had an awesome year. She's, you know, gone to the point of, you know, she's like graduated from the UK. She's gone on excursions to Japan and stuff. And just as recently as this past weekend, she's become Progress Women's Champion. So
phenomenal.
Yeah, it's such a really good story. And seeing someone from the UK that is still to kind of make, I guess, an impact somewhat on, you know, whatever the TV or network or any kind of mainstream show. She's done really well to crack the top 100. So yeah.
Phenomenal stuff, man. I will always say this, and if I get the opportunity to say this every week, I would say this every week. But I think the beauty of doing what we do, for me, my favorite thing is seeing people's progression from them being the journey from being like indie stars or whatever else to grafting and, you know, all that kind of stuff to then making some kind of milestone in their career. And so seeing Rio's as well, knowing her personally, all the rest of it as well is just phenomenal. Like, I can even say that about Jade Cargill as well. It's crazy. I don't think I was actually had any intention to say this on the show, but given what Mex has just said and what we're talking about, it's crazy. I messaged Jade when she got signed and stuff like that, and just yesterday, so about 3 weeks later, I wasn't expecting a response at all. But she's responded saying thank you and blah blah blah, but then also said you were the first one to show me love. So I was like, wow, this is why I do what I do.
Yes,
you know what I mean, it's things like that. So to see Rio and others in the list and, you know, do what they're doing, even Willow as well, and a few others, like it's phenomenal. For myself, when I look at this list, you both said it already with Athena. Could have easily been two or three places higher. Willow's phenomenal. To see Trinity where she is, just 6 months ago, we everyone, and not just us, but everyone was talking about, you know, is she going to come back? Is she even going to wrestle again?
Right.
You know, where's she going to be? Does, you know, even down to the point of, do we care anymore almost? Or because Mercedes was doing whatever, do we care what Trinity's going to do? Or are we going to, you know, forget about her and all that kind of stuff? But we mentioned this last week. I think it's safe to say this year that right now, Trinity's had a better year than Mercedes.
We should also note that Mercedes is not on this list.
I was going to say that next. And I'm sure that caused a bit of, you know, probably some hoo-ha and whatever else. I've not really been on the socials the last week, but, you know, it makes sense because of how they do things. Obviously, you know, it has to be a certain number of matches, I believe a minimum of 6 or a certain amount of time.
Right.
And she didn't hit those two things, and that's the reason why. It's as simple as that. Given if she did maybe a few more matches or whatever else, she would have definitely been on the list, of course. In a very decent position, mainly given the publicity that she received at the early part of this year, and obviously, you know, winning the IWGP Women's Championship and stuff. But unfortunately, injury and whatever else has meant that she doesn't feature on the list, and, you know, for good reason. And so, just being able to say that Trinity's on the list at 23 and Mercedes isn't on it at all. Nobody in the time that these two ladies were not in the ring and not involved in wrestling nobody would have predicted this unless you were the glowest of glowing fans of Trinity, basically. No one would have predicted this. So I think that's amazing for her. Obviously, she just retained as well against Mickie James at Bound for Glory on the weekend as well. So that's phenomenal. And again, you know, just looking at this list in terms of some of the ladies on the indies as well. Layla Gray, Harley Dead, Queen Aminata. Yeah, you mentioned this, Gerard. You know, at the start of this year, we were so hopeful about what she was going to achieve this year. But again, injury kind of, you know, messed that up for her. And it's a shame because she was on a trajectory that was just, you know, the progression was nice. But she's still on there, which is great. Janae Kai is another one to mention.
Yes.
She's just won the MLW, I think it's
featherweight championship. Yep.
Featherweight championship as well. Another one who's been to Japan earlier this year as well, or just a month or 2 months ago, actually, doing her thing there and doing her things all over the indies. It's crazy to think that there are still so many. But here's a question that I had when I first looked at this list. So we've talked about Bianca Belair, we've talked about Jade Cargill and how great and massive stars they are. Are we in a place where, and maybe apart from Athena and Willow Nightingale, those four ladies, after that, as much as we have a good number of ladies, is there this gap at the moment where there's ladies at the top and then ladies unknown or I don't want to say at the bottom, like they're not good, but you know what I mean? We just see them less and all that kind of stuff, or unless you're following the indies, you wouldn't know who they are. Is that a thing, or is that just the way it goes kind of thing?
I would say obviously looking at it visually right now, it's a thing. However, unfortunately, we're probably still in a place where it's like, oh, you know, we're ticking a box to get you through the door. It's like let's make sure this still looks like our sport, guys. Like, let's not bring them all in just yet. Like, so, you know, there may still be an element of that. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I think definitely we're moving to a place where, firstly, we're seeing more black women just get into wrestling, making that move from maybe any other sport that they were doing. Literally, I can't keep up. Any other sport they were doing, coming into wrestling or just, you know, trying wrestling and prospering at it. The current like NXT class, we're gonna get an influx. That NXT class is going to bridge this exact gap that you're talking about. Right. In the next year or year and a half, 2 years, when they next do this list, this list might have to be 300 by then, because they're going to just literally flood the class. Like, I don't know where NXT are. It's like they're putting out an advert, black women apply to NXT now. Like, it's
Jada Parker.
God is good.
Listen,
I'm not all the time.
You lot know who's next door. I'm not saying nothing in it.
Listen. And there's more to come. There's more. There's glory to Jesus.
I'll say yes. Glory to Jesus and to God and to Mary as well.
Yes.
Anyway. Yes, that influx is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. Of course, while that influx is happening of these ladies into the mainstream via NXT, then these ones that are cutting their teeth in the indies right now will have moved up position as well. So yeah, it's going to be more within that. You know, we've even within the year, it may sound like a little. We went from 2 in the top 10 to 3 in the top 10. But then, like I say, it's big. Like, if you look at the landscape of things, and then by the time all of these guys start moving, we're going to be looking at 5s and 6s in the top 10, unless they want to do like a, you know, Stardom push again. But yeah, that's what it should look like.
But here was the interesting thing, even in wanting, here's the problem. Like, this year, I think there were only 2 from that Stardom movement that were in the top 10. And this is interesting. 2 from Stardom in the top 10, 3 black women in the top 10. That's a massive statement, you know.
Minorities are coming.
You know what I mean? Considering that it wasn't all that long ago that you probably could not have named 10 Black female wrestlers.
Yeah.
Very
You know,
true.
so
Very true.
we're really in an incredible space right now. And you mentioned, the indies are blowing up with amazing female Black wrestlers, and it's just like to watch some of these things happen. And a year, so much can happen in a year that's unpredictable, with
Mm.
new promotions popping up and new opportunities
Mm.
for Black women to showcase what they're doing. I think this list, perhaps more than the men's list and more than the tag team list, this
Mm.
list is probably in the most danger of changing dramatically in a year's
Yeah.
time. You know what
Every
I
year.
mean?
Mhm.
Every
Definitely.
year.
Every year.
Every year. So,
Definitely.
in this next year, who knows? Who knows who's going to catch fire? I mean, think about it. We could be talking about, Sol Ruka will be back in terms of injury. And had she not been out, she would have made this list. There are some other names who are either lower on the list or their first time on the list that if they continue this trajectory, woo, we're
Monet
going
will
to
be back.
have who's that?
Monet will be back.
Yeah, Monet will be
True.
back.
True.
Hopefully Aminata will be back. And then again, we're watching hopefully some improvement with Jakara Jackson.
Yep.
No telling where Lash Legend will be in all of this. Like there's a lot of names, and then there are names that we haven't had a chance to even speak yet, who are in the pipeline, who are putting the work in. I'm thinking about Jada Stone and OVW and a few other names. So this has potential to be a crazy list this time next year. I mean, crazy.
I mean, you've mentioned a few of them. There's even more. Like, obviously, we've seen Kalani Jordan doing her thing.
Yes.
There's been a few others in NXT who are kind of, probably made a debut or in the pipeline. We know that they're at the Performance Center. You've got Ruthie J in NWA, who's
right,
fighting for the NWA Women's Championship this week or next week.
I think it's this week,
I believe.
Power.
Yeah. Yep. And so there are so many more that are coming through. Danny B's another one who's been doing,
and she's on the list too.
She's on the list as well.
136.
It's crazy. There are so many. And that's the beauty of it. I think, as we've said, come next year, this list will look very different. I think there's going to be so many more of our ladies on the list as well. And if they're not, as we've already said, they're going to have to increase the number. They're going to have to increase the number by come next year again. So we'll definitely see some more of them on there.
Let me throw this in there. If people want to help make this happen, then I think this is where, when you're watching these ladies, that you talk about it on socials, that you put links out there, because again, the old adage, we perish because of a lack of knowledge, right? So people can't talk about people that they don't know. And so I think for all of the people that want to include the Joshi wrestlers, and that's all well and good,
of course,
but the incredible list of African-American female wrestlers that are out there, as you're seeing them, talk about them, bring it, tag PWI, like blow up the spot so that people have no choice but to pay attention to these athletes.
Tag PWI, tag BWA.
Yes.
Just tag everyone that you can. You know what I mean? It's how people get noticed. As you said, you can't talk about something you don't know. And if there's one person that knows, the only way, or if people are going to know, is if that one person speaks as well.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Going back to Trinity and Bound for Glory from the weekend, as we've already mentioned, Trinity defended her Impact Knockouts Championship against Mickie James, the legend that is Mickie James. But that's not the only thing that we can talk about when it comes to Impact. Impact have decided to make this move to go backwards in moving forward. See what I did there? And are rebranding back to TNA at the start of 2024. Mex, what kind of a change is this? Why do you feel that they have decided to make this transition, and why now?
I've done a lot of research on this as to why.
Yeah,
Like why?
yeah,
What's even the point?
course,
Like
of
I
course.
thought, TNA was something that took them back to a place of maybe regret, bad decisions, things of that nature.
True.
They kind of molded into Impact. There was a time when I know Jeff Jarrett had his hands trying to do his thing, what was it, Global Force Wrestling
Global
and
Force
stuff like
Wrestling,
that.
Lord in heaven.
Yeah, and now we're returning to something which admittedly still has or still gives a lot of fans fond memories. TNA was, I guess, one of the alternatives to WWE,
Yeah,
and it became a place of like it was a true alternative in the sense that you got different kinds of wrestling. Firstly, the presentation was different. They had a six-sided ring,
Right.
like
I miss that so much.
Me too.
Personally, I've said on record, I don't want to see that thing return unless it's for like the X Division matches or something like that. Like I personally don't want to see it return, but I know that it's embedded in the foundations of what TNA was, so
Right.
I get it. I think what it's done, and admittedly, they've done a lot of work that's Impact, a lot of great work. I think especially since the pandemic. Again, admittedly, I don't watch them week to week, but I do catch the pay-per-views, and it's always impressive. It's always impressive to the fact that I'm thinking, where can I watch Impact during the week, time-wise? Like, how can I squeeze this in? They've done a lot of work to repair and grow the Impact name. They've, survived rocky waters and stuff like that. And admittedly, they've done the research. They've asked the fans, do you want this TNA name back? And the fans still want it. So it's almost like, showing that, right, we've now got a more stable foundation. Now we can return to the name and the look and everything. And everyone's here for it. Now, I hope it comes with the same direction that Impact is going in, and we don't revert back to things like giving legends the pen and letting legends come and flood the show and all of that kind of stuff. But I think Impact's TNA is in really good hands now. So yeah, I'd really like them to kind of kick on from here and become a true contender eventually. Like even with they got a North England tour that's coming very soon. A lot of those dates are all sold out. The approach they've taken, they've got like the cultaholics involved, what cultures involved. So it looks like they're even using the power of social media in that aspect to kind of help grow their platform. Yeah, as a third brand or as a sort of third mainstream show, they're being very smart about how they grow, and they've now got the likes of CM Punk hanging around backstage and the likes of Will Ospreay saying, listen, like when my contract's up next year, this is a contender, especially because of the way they film. And the way Ospreay wishes to, live his life, maybe back in England with his missus, with his kid. It's a contender. So, kudos to them. They truly deserve this. And I'm happy for the fans that are happy to see, TNA come back in this way.
Yeah, man. I'm all here for it. It makes sense. When I first saw it, I was like, why? But then when I've looked into it as well, it makes complete sense. Obviously, it's based on the fans. And with a company like Impact, the fans that watch it week to week have to be diehard fans, so their voice matters. In a massive way, way more than the 20 million plus WWE universe. It's a smaller bunch of people who are diehard fans and have been watching the thing, whether they're new to it, whether they've been there from the first TNA days. And all the rest of it. And like you said, Max, when you think of TNA, you think about the alternative to WWE. At one point, it was the only one that there was in terms of close to mainstream. It gave us the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, Chris Sabin, Frankie Kazarian, Ron Killings, all of these people that we probably wouldn't have known anything about if it wasn't for TNA back in the day. So, and one thing I've always seen is that they are heavily reliant on their past as well. So whenever they get the chance to talk about the past, and even on I think even on their weekly shows, they'll show a clip of old stuff and whatever else. So it makes sense that they're reverting back to the glory days, I guess, in order to move forward. And I know they've got big plans. The things that Scott D'Amore and everyone else that are running the show have done in the last just maybe 2 or 3 years in terms of where they are is phenomenal. And now you've got the likes of Trinity, you've got Will Ospreay, Mike Bailey. That match,
have you seen it? Sensational.
Whoa. Oh man, we could talk about that for an hour, to be honest.
Right.
Let's not. That those two guys, and then you've got Jonathan Gresham and so many other people. It's nice to see the mixture of the talent that they have. So upcoming stars, people that were forgotten about in the bigger companies who have come along and been able to kind of make a name for themselves, or kind of claw back something that they had before, to some of some established stars who have come in, like Trinity, for example. It's very intriguing, very interesting to see what they're going to do from here on in. Speaking of these stars who kind of made their name in Impact, Chris Bay and Ace Austin won the Impact Tag Team Championship for a second time, defeating Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz. Again, another thing that's massive. That match again was great. And then also after being let go by AEW, Sonny Kiss made his debut on Impact during the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match.
Yes.
The question has been asked, was this a one-off? Is he going to be there? I know that from reports, there is a strong possibility of him carrying on. There's no confirmation of him being actually signing a contract, but there's at least some kind of short-term agreement with Sonny Kiss, so we will hopefully see him a little more often as well, or a few more times in the very near future in Impact, which is great for him. I think personally, I think it's the perfect place for him. I think it's a perfect place for Sonny Kiss to be. Impact just has this whole thing of embracing people's differences.
Yes.
In a way where it's not in your face. It's not like, you don't feel as though it's a tick box type of scenario either.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just come, be you, do your thing, and we'll do the rest and put you out there.
Right.
So I think that's perfect for Sonny Kiss. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that as well. Gerard, in terms of your view on this whole thing, how are you seeing a future for TNA? What does 2024 look like for TNA? Are we going to see a better TV deal? Are we going to see them in better arenas? Are we going to see stuff like that? Or should it just stay on the same wavelength, just hold on to the consistency that you have right now?
So the press release that I saw said that one of the things that they are interested in doing is in going to larger arenas and really helping to grow their brand. And I hope that if they're doing that it is very calculated and very intentional. I think one of the things that has made Impact great has been the realization that says, in the early TNA days, they were trying to compete with WWE to the point where they had even moved their Impact show onto a Monday night, going head to head with Raw. And it was like, that's a mistake. What you need to do is be the alternative. What you just mentioned in terms of this being a great place for Sonny Kiss, for, some of the undeads, for, these characters that you would not comfortably find, Crazy Steve and all these other people, that you would not comfortably see in a space like WWE or even AEW. I think that what they have to do is, okay, I'm all for growth, but I think it needs to be measured. I don't think that they need to go get a 10,000 seat arena. Like right now they're packing out 1,000 seat, 2,000 seaters. Like, cool. So if you're going to expand, go to a 3,000 seater, right? Don't decide to go, we're going all out. You're going to do a 10,000 seater. We're going to prove the people wrong. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Or else you'll end up in the same scenario you were in before. I think they have, to me, it's far better to get a 3,000 seat arena and be sold out because 5,000 people wanted tickets, as opposed to getting a 10,000 seat arena with only 5,000 people wanting tickets.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then we got to paint this whole thing different and shoot certain camera angles. And we don't want to go through that. I mean, even Ring of Honor went through that, you know, in their decision to say, hey, we're going to go, like, don't do that, you know, figure out where your audience is and then let it organically grow. Like if it had, but I think for that to happen, they have to get on a television network that is in more homes. Here in the States, they're on Access TV. And in all of the places that I've lived, Access TV isn't in our cable space. Wow. So the only way I end up watching is through their app. And then they don't air it live, you know, they air it after it's aired on Access, which is fine. I can at least program myself to go, okay, I'll go back and watch it then. But, you know, they need it to be available in places where people can watch. So I think, to me, the next big thing they have to do is get a really solid TV deal, you know, and I'm just sitting here going, if the NWA can get a deal with CW, certainly TNA can find a deal with a reputable television network. No shade to Access, but Access is not available in a lot, not readily available in terms of basic cable. So if they're going to go the cable route, go with a network that is accessible, that people can watch on their app, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the next logical move for them. And then I think things can really blow up.
Interesting is, again, you know, another thing in the world of wrestling that just feels interesting to keep our eyes on, and we can expect to see it progress, and keep us talking about something else and not just one place or two places. You know what I mean? It's great that we have that opportunity and that chance, and for the wrestlers and everyone else that's involved in making a wrestling show happen. You know, we talk about access. We are always accessible on YouTube. This is the end of the show. You can find us here, right here, on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Of course, whenever you want, on demand, without a subscription, without paying for it, at least anyway. You can find us on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Obviously, always as well, live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. British time. You lot can work out whenever your time is. That's too much mine. That's too much for me. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for free. So you know when this guy Mex puts out all of his reactions to WWE, AEW, and anything else in between. You can also find Mex on the Wrestling's YouTube channel with the man them on Wrestling's. I believe one of the latest videos is an interview with Darius Lockhart. Is that out already?
Yes, it's fantastic too. It is fantastic.
I have to admit I haven't watched it yet, but it's definitely on my watch list right now. So check that out, guys. You can find Mex himself on the WrestleMania UK Instagram, on WrestleMania UK, and WrestleMania.uk on X. Find this guy, Gerard Bonner, the professor, on all things Bonafide. You can find him also at the Nightmare Factory, WWT Live, Battle Slam. Oh my gosh, we're adding Caribbean wrestling. Like, what is it again?
That's right.
Caribbean wrestling, yes.
All Caribbean wrestling.
That's
My God. Kingston, Jamaica's the next one?
It's in Montego Bay. Montego Bay. Yeah.
I'm not your friend.
Nice.
I'm not your friend. I'm not your friend. That's it. This is the last time you'll see Gerard on the
Oh my gosh.
Wait, are you firing Gerard because of cause?
Jealousy
Publicly.
Jealousy is real. Find Gerard here, there, and absolutely everywhere.
Wow.
And you can find me, A Dazzle, on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, BWA Dazzle on X. If you don't see us before then, you will see us again here next week, Tuesday. Don't miss it. See you later, folks.
Yeah.